William and Catherine didn't just leave Windsor, they fled it. And the reason is not a headline-sounding scandal. It's the kind of discovery that makes you check your windows twice at night. It's not about an affair. It's not about a leaked text. It's about the ground beneath Adelaide Cottage. Because in late November, a routine structural inspection uncovered something that should not have existed. A network of underground passages, old enough to predate the current cottage, and forgotten with a completeness that feels impossible. Then the engineers didn't find an empty historical curiosity. They found evidence of recent, deliberate human presence. Tools with no meaningful rust, dust with footprints that hadn't had time to settle, and items that weren't supposed to be there at all. Before we roll the footage, just one thing. If you enjoy our work, drop a like and hit subscribe. Over 98% of you are watching without subscribing. Let's change that right now. It's free for you, but it fuels everything we do. Subscribed? Perfect. Now, enjoy the video. Crown Watch has seen royal myths get manufactured into reality by tabloid ink. This wasn't that. This was real enough to break the calm, ordinary choreography the Wales family relies on. And it happened with William and Catherine inside the house, above the tunnels, living their normal life, as if the past couldn't reach them. Here's how the night allegedly began. About midnight on a Tuesday, a security alert triggered where movement should have been impossible. Infrared sensors embedded in the walls of Adelaide Cottage detected motion in the lower corridors, the kind of motion that suggests someone is moving with intention, not accident. William woke first. That detail matters. His military background turns something is wrong into a reflex. He didn't debate it. He got up. 4 strides. Door opened. No shouting. Just the kind of immediate readiness that makes you realize you can't unlearn training. Catherine woke almost immediately after. Not because of gossip, because of mother's instincts under pressure. She didn't rush to questions. She listened. She learned, quickly, the difference between a scare and a threat. Then came the knock. Soft, insistent. The kind of knock that carries urgency without trying to create panic. The door opened to Marcus Headley, their head of personal protection, standing in the dim hallway with an expression that already answered every question. Behind him, 3 additional officers took positions that looked staged for clarity. Not for comfort, not for conversation. Their posture said this was not a drill, not a false alarm, not something they would hand back to the night shift with a shrug. What Headley told them turned the story in seconds. Structural engineers were in the property for a routine foundation assessment. That's what they were contracted to do. Nothing glamorous, nothing cinematic. Historic buildings constantly demand monitoring. But beneath the cottage, engineers discovered a hidden underground network that predates the current structure. Some portions, investigators believe, date back centuries, with references tied to the English Civil War. And the real alarm wasn't that the tunnels existed, it was what investigators found inside them. Repeated evidence of recent human activity, not one old trespass, but sustained access. A folding chair unexpectedly clean, a thermal blanket folded with care, empty water bottles with purchase dates that fell near the previous month, and photographs. Photographs are always the most chilling evidence, because they mean someone planned to remember. Someone didn't just enter, someone watched, someone documented. Those images weren't faded, they weren't grainy tourist shots. They were surveillance pictures taken from angles that suggested intimate knowledge of routines, angles that imply the photographer understood where the family would be and when. And not once, repeatedly, over time, while the Wales family slept above. Catherine moved before the full explanation finished. That's the detail that sticks with me, because it reveals the fracture line in composed public narratives. She didn't wait for a complete briefing. She acted as if the threat was immediate, because it was. George, Charlotte, Louis. 3 children, each reacting differently, each absorbing the same truth in their own language. George is 11, old enough to understand that royal life comes with complications other children never face. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. He watched. He listened. And as the minutes turned into an evacuation, he began placing the pieces together faster than adults expected. Charlotte is 9. She is observant in a way that makes adults underestimate her. because she's still a child. During the nighttime movement, she asked the question that cuts through every careful explanation. "Are we safe here, Mummy?" William stood nearby as Catherine answered with the voice of someone trying to keep a family intact. Her pause lasted a fraction of a second, but William saw it. The pause wasn't about theatrics. It was about the weight of responsibility settling in. Because no parent can truly prepare for the idea that someone was underneath their home while their children slept. The evacuation itself moved with practiced efficiency. Royal security teams train constantly for scenarios they hope never materialize. Louis, still foggy with sleep at 6, was carried down the staircase by William. Catherine guided George and Charlotte with hands on shoulders, a touch that said reassurance without pretending. Staff had already prepared. Lists updated quarterly, items stored in secure locations across the property. That detail isn't fluff. It's the kind of planning that tells you the Wales family lives with contingencies, and yet still cannot outsmart everything. 3 vehicles were waiting in the drive with engines running, routes plotted and communicated through the broader security network. Above them, Adelaide Cottage sat in November darkness with warm windows. Below them, history had opened like a trapdoor. The motorcade pulled away at precisely 43 minutes past midnight. And behind them, the cottage began transforming into something else entirely. Crime scene, archaeological site, and security nightmare. Because by the time dawn arrived, white forensic tents had sprouted across the grounds like sudden warnings. Detective Chief Inspector Sarah Wainwright was reportedly pulled from her bed at midnight. Her role mattered because she specialized in historical property crimes, cases where the past complicates everything. Wainwright didn't treat the tunnels like a normal trespass. She treated them like an ecosystem. She brought ground-penetrating radar and thermal imaging to map the underground network with a precision that regular property inspections never manage. The initial surveys had suggested a limited structure. That's what engineers believed, and what official records implied. But the radar didn't stop. The tunnels extended far beyond what anyone thought existed beneath Windsor. Investigators traced passages that connected Adelaide Cottage not just to one location, but outward, toward Windsor Castle itself, and toward other estate properties, including Frogmore Cottage and Royal Lodge. The implications were staggering. Not because tunnels are automatically villainous, but because the network suggested access points that could bypass modern security measures designed for threats from beyond gates. It wasn't just a structural anomaly, it was a hidden infrastructure of vulnerability, and it had remained unseen through decades of surveys and security sweeps, which leads to the most unsettling question of all. If everyone was so sure Windsor was protected, how could a network like this be forgotten? Not lost in rumor, forgotten in records, forgotten in planning, forgotten in the basic map that security teams rely on. At the center of everything were the photographs. Wainwright's team reportedly found the images in chambers located beneath where Prince Louis's bedroom sat about 20 feet above. Which means the observation wasn't theoretical. It was timed. It was targeted. It was close enough to invade the private reality of a child's room without crossing any visible threshold. Those pictures suggested observation that aligned with daily rhythms, school drop-off timing, Catherine's morning runs through the estate, the hours when security presence dipped due to shift changes. This wasn't casual stalking. It was methodical. It was schedule-aware. It required planning, patience, and repeated access. And as William received updates hourly throughout that first day, the story began to resemble something more organized than an individual misstep. It began to resemble a sustained operation, executed with the discipline of someone who believed they could outlast detection. William and Catherine were moved away from Adelaide Cottage. They stayed in a secure location at Kensington Palace, and the irony was brutal. Windsor wasn't chosen because it was perfect security. It was chosen because it was something else. It offered space, gardens, a childhood that felt less like a glass case. Now their normal life had been violated from below. By mid-afternoon, the investigation had expanded in ways that forced multiple authorities to collaborate. Royal Collection Trust specialists, including Dr. Helena Ashworth, were brought in because the tunnels weren't just modern risk, they were historical structures. Mapping them required cultural sensitivity, but security risk demanded speed. And that's where the story turned even stranger. Ashworth reportedly found evidence the passages dated to at least the 1600s, possibly earlier. Some sections bore signs consistent with use during World War defenses when Windsor Castle was fortified against invasion fears. Others suggested shelters had been used throughout the Blitz. So the tunnels had a past, but the intruder left a present. The question became, who rediscovered this network and why? By evening, the crisis grew teeth. King Charles received a briefing at Clarence House. His reaction, according to reports circulated among staff, was controlled but immediate. He knows security scares. He knows what credible threats look like. He's lived through the constant vigilance that follows public life. But this felt different. This wasn't a threat outside the walls. This was a threat embedded in the ground beneath their feet. A security failure that nobody expected, because the vulnerability wasn't designed into the system, it was hidden from it. Then the government escalated involvement. By nightfall, MI5 was reportedly engaged for counterintelligence and threat assessment. Their task wasn't just to search for who entered, it was to determine who planned, and whether the intruder's knowledge had sources inside the system. Agents began reviewing security footage from the past 6 months, not because they assumed the footage would reveal a face on the first frame, but because patterns exist when surveillance is consistent. They searched for vehicles that lingered too long in areas with sightlines to Adelaide Cottage. They looked for people who appeared in the same places on non-random days. Digital forensics reportedly began extracting metadata from the photographs found underground. That includes timestamps, image data, and possible identifiers from the device used. In plain terms, investigators tried to figure out the camera equipment and build a profile of someone who had invested significant time and resources. And then, as the days moved forward, the profile started to sharpen into something unsettling. Catherine's role shifted. She had to maintain normalcy for the children, while investigators worked at full intensity behind the scenes. But normalcy doesn't mean nothing changed. It means children still eat breakfast, still practice schooling routines, still get gently guided through fear they can't fully name. George started asking harder questions, not because he wanted to panic, because he was smart enough to notice how every briefing contradicted the idea that this was a simple fix. He stood at a window overlooking Kensington Gardens, his posture squared in a way that reminded William painfully of his own youth. He looked like someone trying to understand why adults were suddenly helpless. William and George spoke briefly. That matters too. William didn't give a lecture. He offered truth with boundaries. He tried to be honest without creating panic. He tried to acknowledge reality without overwhelming a child who didn't choose royal life. And he tried not to repeat the emotional distance of his own upbringing, distance William always promised he wouldn't replicate. Now the world handed him a test that didn't care about promises. Meanwhile, investigators continued working through the night. Portable lighting cast sharp shadows across grounds that had always looked peaceful in daylight. The longer the search went, the more it felt like the house itself was changing its meaning. The tunnels weren't merely corridors. They were evidence storage. They were staging rooms. They were spaces designed for waiting. Day 3 brought revelations that moved the case from pure security into something darker, something touching on obsession and historical fantasy. Among the items recovered were documents preserved in waterproof containers, maps marked with annotations, cross-references, notes that suggested research beyond ordinary surveillance. The name for what that research became was not spoken in public briefings, but investigators noticed patterns, references to the English Civil War, theories, speculation about hidden treasures allegedly concealed by royals during political upheaval. The language wasn't academic, it wasn't cautious, it had the tone of someone blending history with conspiracy. Professor James Harrington, a historian specializing in royal property architecture, was reportedly consulted. He examined the maps and notes and found references that echoed a particular kind of obsession, one where historical intrigue curdles into dangerous fantasy. His concern, reportedly, wasn't just that someone broke in. It was that the intruder appeared to believe they had uncovered a secret narrative. And when people believe a secret narrative hard enough, they stop listening to reality. That's when the case became about more than access. It became about intent. And intent is where the story stops being manageable. Because the dates suggested this wasn't limited to recent months. Journals deeper inside the tunnel network implied activity nearly 2 years long. Items were found that dated back almost 24 months, even though the recent water bottles and equipment indicated the intruder continued operating. So either this was a long-term operation that paused and resumed, or a deeper structure existed and multiple people contributed. Both are terrifying, but in different ways. Catherine's fury reportedly rose each time new evidence arrived. It's easy to reduce royal anger to performance. But this wasn't about posture. This was about violation. Someone had been under their home while her children slept above. Someone had watched and waited. Someone had planned. The most invasive betrayal in this story isn't just physical access, it's psychological knowledge. The feeling that an intruder understood you before you understood them. Security planning moved into a new phase. It wasn't just about sealing entrances. Investigators realized every room in Adelaide Cottage would require sweeping for surveillance equipment. The entire property would require a security upgrade that would fundamentally change what Adelaide Cottage was meant to be. Relative modesty became a flaw. Accessibility became risk. And that's when an ugly question entered the conversation at the highest level. If Windsor's tunnels could be forgotten, what else could be lurking in Britain's most protected spaces? King Charles reportedly convened a meeting at Buckingham Palace with security chiefs and senior officials. The discussion turned frank in a way royal meetings rarely are. Officials addressed something that sounds obvious only after you hear it. If tunnels beneath Windsor were forgotten and exploited, then other historical features might represent similar risks. The Tower of London, Hampton Court Palace, even Buckingham Palace itself. Not because these buildings are dangerous by nature, but because centuries accumulate structures that modern surveys don't always fully map. And then came the question that always complicates royal security. Public disclosure. Because while investigators worked, journalists began noticing that the Wales family had not been seen at Adelaide Cottage. Speculation spread faster than any official statement could contain. The press began building its own narrative. The Guardian ran pieces about royal security vulnerabilities in historic sites. BBC reporters sought official comments and were given careful non-answers. Social media platforms did what they always do. They turned uncertainty into certainty and rumor into everyone knows. Online, hashtags allegedly trended quickly, including variations that framed the incident as a tunnel threat and a royal underground breach. Conspiracy forums, always hungry, connected the incident to older myths about hidden royal treasures. Some accounts insisted this was part of a larger campaign targeting the monarchy. Others claimed it was a lone fanatic obsessed with hidden vault fantasies. Both interpretations spread because both comfort and frighten different people. And the truth, like most truths, was more complicated than a simple story. Inside Kensington Palace, William and Catherine dealt with the human cost. Children adjust to new routines, but the psychological impact of being evacuated at midnight doesn't disappear when the morning sunlight returns. A betrayal this close doesn't wash off. And then, the investigation produced emotional testimony that leaked through sympathetic sources, not formal interviews. People described what it felt like to be around Catherine after briefings. They described the way her calm looked different now. Like calm that had become a shield, not a personality. One staff member, speaking privately to a reporter, described her as in motion. Another recalled her asking for details not about politics, but about access. "Where were they when my children were here?" the source said Catherine asked. That line spread in paraphrased form because it captured what the public needed to understand, even if it couldn't understand everything. Meanwhile, polls began appearing. Not official ones, but rapid response surveys, tracked by outlets and analysts trying to read the public mood. Many indicated that trust in royal security remained high, but confidence dropped once underground tunnels became the headline language. Some viewers reportedly expressed anger at the idea that records could be wrong. Others expressed fear that an obsession could reach a child's room. Political fallout followed in the way politics always follows royal vulnerability. Parliamentary questions emerged about property security audits. Opposition voices demanded an inquiry. Government spokespeople emphasized cooperation with intelligence services and declined to speculate publicly. But speculation had already happened, and when speculation becomes a substitute for information, people fill in blanks with their own worst-case scenarios. International institutions noticed too. Foreign media outlets, including broadcasters known for focusing on the human side of security crises, referenced the incident and compared it to past historical tunnel discoveries in Europe, places where hidden wartime infrastructure later became public and sparked new debates about preservation versus security. Some governments issued statements reminding citizens that heritage sites require modernization. Others avoided direct comments but monitored developments closely, and that global attention mattered, because this case wasn't just about Britain's royals anymore. It became a broader story about how modern security systems rely on historical assumptions. Assumptions are fragile, and tunnels are patient. Now we reach the part that turns the story from horrifying to genuinely unsettling. Because as investigators focused on the intruder's possible motives, treasure myths, civil war obsession, and surveillance planning, the evidence suggested a second layer. The intruder didn't just know where to go. They knew how to disappear. They left almost no obvious fingerprints in the accessible record. Their equipment usage appeared strategic. Their presence didn't trigger earlier detection, suggesting either sophisticated timing or information access that helped them anticipate security routines. That possibility, access to knowledge, not just physical movement, changed the tone of briefings. It's one thing to say someone trespassed. It's another to suggest someone planned around the structure of the protection system itself. And once that suspicion entered, the investigation's direction reportedly narrowed around two categories: outsiders with specialized skills and insiders with familiarity. Inside political ranks, that's the kind of split that creates silent fear. Because every organization has people who know schedules, access protocols, and where cameras point when lights dim. If someone exploited a map, then a map had to exist. If the intruder was able to operate for 2 years, then the question becomes what, exactly, failed to notice them. There's a reason why royal officials speak in careful circles. They understand consequences. If they admit their system relied on incomplete records, then trust becomes a problem, not just a security matter. By late week, resignations and reassignment rumors circulated in London. Some claims were dismissed, others stuck like burrs. A security manager's name appeared in discussion threads. A historian's archived role was questioned. The royal household issued no formal accusation, but the rumor machine doesn't need formal accusations to do damage. And William and Catherine had to endure it. In interviews that never quite became interviews, sources described how William spoke about accountability more than anger. He reportedly kept the emotional focus on safety, not blame. But inside his silence, you could feel something accumulating. The quiet pressure of a man trained to take threats seriously. Catherine, meanwhile, reportedly refused to treat this like a one-time event. She demanded sweeps. She insisted on evidence, not assurances, because she had learned something the hard way. The most dangerous threats don't always enter through doors. Sometimes they rise through floors. So here's where the story ends for now, but not for the people who now live with the consequences. If tunnels were forgotten by official records, someone had to know. Either they found the evidence accidentally, or they inherited knowledge, through documents misfiled, through staff who remembered too late, through research communities that treat heritage like a treasure map. And if the intruder's obsession involved Civil War myths and alleged royal treasure hiding, then the photographs and maps weren't just stalking tools, they were part of a narrative the intruder wanted to prove. The next question isn't, who was there? The next question is, what else is there? What other forgotten corridors exist in properties the public assumes are fully mapped? And the final question is the one that keeps security experts awake. If someone can hide beneath Adelaide Cottage for 2 years, then what else could be hidden under a different residence? Somewhere another family believes is safe. So stay with us. Because this story is not done. It's unfolding under our feet, and when the truth finally rises, it won't just change Windsor. It will change what we think protection means. Subscribe and stay tuned, because the most unsettling part of this discovery isn't the tunnels. It's the possibility that someone has been studying the royals for longer than anyone can admit.